Welcome to Your City Connections, where you get to meet entertaining and informative guests. Guests such as an artist with a brush or with a camera, and guest with a violin. City Connections, providing insightful interviews with favorite son Lieutenant Governor Todd Lamb. To city commissioners, the mayor. Interviews with a rodeo queen, to beauty queen, and even a NBA player. Now, join Steve Kime as he discusses another engaging topic on City Connections.
Hello again and welcome to City Connections. I'm Steve Kime and welcome to our Veterans Day show for 2016. And thank you for taking time to join us. And right off the bat, for all of you that have served, thank you for your service, thank you for your sacrifice, and also for the families involved. Thank you for what you've done for our country, and we are so blessed to live in the USA. And with me today are three patriots. I call them friends, I call them patriots. I call them, really stellar gentlemen that I've gotten to know here in the last few years. And they have a story to tell. And so we welcome them to City Connections. Young man to my left, you're familiar with, is George Bellmon. George, you don't mind that I say that you're 92, is that all right?
That's
It's
right.
too late, I've already said it. So George is 92 years old. He graduated from Billings High School in 1941, and then he graduated from Oklahoma State in 1967. There's a few years there for you to finish school. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. George enlisted into the Marine Corps, and he served in the Pacific Theater, and you spent a lot of time in Okinawa, right?
Yes.
Wasn't it 80-some days?
Yes.
Okay. And George is a Bronze Star recipient, and he's also served as a field commander. His brother Henry was governor of Oklahoma. I remember the days of going up to your brother's farm or your farm, and I would haul hay for the governor in those days, but I didn't know George at the time. Your brother also served in the Marines as well. And understand that Governor Henry was a Silver Star recipient. But George was a senior at Oklahoma State in 1951. And then Uncle Sam called again during the Korean War. And so off he went. He was unable to finish school at that time. Your final rank, George, in the Marine Corps was captain. Is that correct?
Yes.
And George finally graduated from Oklahoma State in 1967. He crammed 4 years of college into 26 years. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. And my next special guest, I've gotten to know recently, Captain Bob Ford. Bob served in Vietnam as a helicopter pilot commander. He was born in Shawnee, Oklahoma. His father was the president of the Shawnee Milling Company. However, Bob's grandfather, J. Lloyd Ford, founded the Shawnee Milling Company back in the early days. We'll say that. One thing that Bob and I have in common is we both graduated from the University of Oklahoma, but he left for Vietnam. I didn't leave for Vietnam. He is currently the executive vice president of Shawnee Milling and the manager of the O'Keene Milling. And also, Bob is the author of the book Black Cat 2-1, and we'll talk to Bob about his book in just a moment. And also to my far left is my good brother, as I call him. We may be cousins by marriage, but I really feel connected to him as my brother. This is Major Ed Pulido, U.S. Army retired, served during Operation Iraqi Freedom. Major Ed is the senior vice president of the Fold of Honor Foundation, and Major Ed will tell us about the Folds of Honor Foundation here in just a little bit. He's also the founding member of the Warriors for Freedom Foundation. So you can see his heart and his life and his commitment is all about giving back to the community. He has a bachelor in military science and marketing and also criminal justice, and he has a master's in human relations. And you may recognize Major Ed Pulido because you see him on Fox News. He's on Fox and Friends. I know he's appeared on CNN. He's very connected with the PGA Golf Tour, PGA Magazine. He's earned numerous awards, and he's also author of the book Warrior for Freedom, which I have in my left hand right here. Warrior for Freedom, Challenge, Triumph, and Change, Major Edward Pulido. So all three of you gentlemen, boy, we got through all those introductions. That's pretty impressive. So thank you for being here, and let me get my notes. And George, we'll start with you. What is this statement? The Marines go first? Is that it? So you'll go first today, okay? George, we have visited from time and time in the past, and you told me just kind of a brief story. Can you go back and tell me what you were doing on Sunday, December 7th, 1941?
Yes, Steve.
I think you were at OSU at the time, or at Stillwater at the time?
I graduated from high school in '41, and then that fall I enrolled at Oklahoma A&M at that time, and it happened on a Sunday afternoon or Sunday morning. I and two other boys were drinking a Coke at the Aggie drugstore on the campus, right directly across from the fire station. And on the wall, they had a little shelf, and on the shelf was a little radio. And during our time there, it came on the radio that the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor. And we looked at each other, and neither of us knew anything about Pearl Harbor. But as time went on, the next hour or so, it dominated the airways, of course. And it didn't take long for us to realize the significance of what was going on, and we also knew that our way of life would be changing, which it did.
And I think it changed a lot of people's lives.
It did, for a fact, an awful lot, at home and abroad. But I finished that year, and it seemed like at that time, Steve, it took our government quite a while to organize the draft. But it finally happened, and at one time, it was a little hard to enlist. We had to be released by our draft board before we could enlist. And but anyway, after a length of time, my older brother, had just graduated at midterm, and by having his degree, he was able to enlist in the Marine Corps and go directly to Quantico, Virginia, which is the home of the Marine Corps School, the officers' training. And in 12 weeks, he became commissioned, and on his way from Quantico to California, he stopped by home. And when I saw him in uniform, that was it. I couldn't wait to get in. Okay. And I went before the draft board and got released, and then I enlisted in the Marine Corps. Now, where do you want me to stop?
Well, that's a good spot, and we'll come back to you in just a moment. But that sets the stage about enlisting and really the influence that your brother had on you as well. Bob, let's talk a little bit about Black Cat 2-1. You're the author of that book. Someone watching this show for the first time, and maybe they didn't see our first interview, Bob, tell us about your book.
Well, I wrote the book to honor the men with whom I served. And I knew that if I didn't write the book, that even my children would not realize what it was like to be in combat, much less the kind of men that I was around. And every one of us served with honor and dedication. And when I sent the manuscript to several people, from young women, school teachers, all the way up to 85-year-old to 90-year-old people, they all said the same thing pretty much, that we have never heard anything good about Vietnam, and we never heard anything good what you guys did. I said, I cannot believe that we have not heard these things talked about. I had a retired doctor in O'Keene, Dr. Dale Daughter, said that, my gosh, I read this thing twice, and I promise you that if this book were read by the public, their view about Vietnam would change. And that was one of the best compliments I ever had. And so to answer your question, I wrote it to dedicate this to the men that served in Vietnam. And I wanted to honor that incredible machine, the Huey helicopter. Mm-hmm. And I wanted my kids to know what the heck I did, because they had no idea. That was it. And I think I accomplished it. I really do. I feel real good about it. I'm very proud that I wrote the book.
Well, we appreciate you writing it, and we'll show pictures of the cover of the book throughout our interview. To my far left and your right, as you're watching our program today, is Major Ed Pulido, U.S. Army retired. And we are taping this show a little bit early so we can run it before Veterans Day and really during and after Veterans Day. Major Ed, August, the month of August has a special reminder or a meaning to you, because when you're in Iraq serving our country, you, along with many others, was impacted by an IED blast. Tell us about that story and the significance of August to you, if you would, please.
Yeah, on August 17th of 2004, I would hit an improvised explosive device, a roadside bomb that would change my life forever. And as my Alive Day comes into play here this year, 12 years of recovery, 12 years of what I call challenge, the triumphs, the changes, because you come back changed from war, all of us have. And the thing that's so inspirational is that, you know, I can come back, I can also pay it forward to those that took care of me, the people that supported me, people like you and our family, but more importantly, strangers that come in our midst and want to know what we're all about. And that's what I represent every day. I wrote a book as well, but the thing that is most inspirational is the fact that we can tell a story, but we can also give people hope, opportunity, and we can also thank those that are the ones that take that oath of office to defend the greatest nation in the world, the United States of America. And as my father had once told me, Vietnam-era veteran as well, and of course years Hispanic, and you know what, he lived a great life, and he still does, and he taught us one thing, and that is to serve not only God, our country, and more importantly, serve our families. And that, to me, is the essence of what we do in the military. That's what we stand for. And that's what our enlisted and non-commissioned officers, the backbone of our military, understand. And on that day, they didn't leave me behind on the field of battle, and so I'm honored and grateful to all of our veterans, but more specifically to those enlisted and non-commissioned officers for saving my life.
Major Ed, as he referred to, is the author of the book, Warrior for Freedom. Major Ed lost his left leg due to all the trauma from that blast and that injury. And I mentioned that to say you've been there and done that. And so you have credibility with people that are dealing with depression, with the loss of a limb, but also the fact that you just kind of been there and you can really relate to these individuals. You're involved in an organization called Folds of Honor. Can you tell us, Major Ed, a little bit about that organization, Folds of Honor Foundation?
Yeah, Folds of Honor has roots here in the state of Oklahoma. It was started by Major Dan Rooney, who's an F-16 fighter pilot, PGA golf professional. But the most important things, he's done 3 combat tours in Iraq, and of course flies the F-16. And here at Vance Air Force Base, we have a special calling. I mean, our pilots, of course, train here, and a great community supporter. And I think for me, you know, what I find is that when not only did I write this book, Warrior for Freedom, but for Folds of Honor, we give scholarships to the families of the fallen and wounded. So for me, writing the book was about raising awareness for that wonderful organization. And to date, we've given away, or we've supported over 10,000 scholarships. We're on pace to raise millions of dollars for these deserving military families. And Major Rooney had a vision, and that was to honor the sacrifice, educate the legacy. And after being on a United Airlines flight going to Grand Rapids, Michigan, and witnessing the remains of a young man coming back to his final resting place, he did something that is powerful, and that is that he took that oath and he said, hey, what can I do with it? And what can I do to inspire others to jump on board and support these military families? And as both of you know, sometimes our military families are forgotten. So if we can provide remembrance, honor, duty, and respect to them, and not only just give them a flag of honor, but also say we're going to provide you education, what we can do is do exactly what we did in World War II, and that is that we can honor and empower individuals in this great country, number one, to be patriots,
Sure.
And in number 2, to get a quality education that you and I and us 3 here have provided them with our sacrifice.
Very good. Bob, this question directed to you. From July 67 to 1968, you flew over 1,000 missions in Vietnam to protect and also to rescue troops. I want to get this number right. It is noted that there was 2,197 helicopter pilots, 2,717 crew members that were killed. So my question to you is, with all this conflict and danger and challenges, Bob, what kept you focused and really what helped you through that year?
Well, the mission kept us focused. You know, I flew my first mission 30 minutes after I hit my unit, and I never really thought of the danger that was involved, because the only thing we knew was when somebody needed us, we went.
Right.
It was never if, gosh, do you think we should go? It was if only keep everybody informed, and we're going. So get ready. You know, buckle up. We're going to go. And as far as getting me through the year, I've been asked that question one other time, and they even asked me, did your letters home keep you going? I said, not at all. All there was a brief recess from combat. What kept us going was what's going to be the next mission, and how are we going to accomplish this mission, especially if you had to go back the second and third time. That's when it was the toughest. And so it was never in a doubt. And as far as 1,000 combat missions, I wasn't the only guy. We all were the same. We were all cut the same. We were all volunteers. The American public has been informed that 66% of those that served in combat in Vietnam were volunteers. You've never heard that.
That's an important number to share.
And really, Steve, and I got to say this right now, sitting next to these two guys, it's almost, I forgot why I'm even here. It's just what an honor. Thank you so much for this. But that's my answer. It's nothing more than that radio, coming over the radio, hearing those guys want you, and you're gone. Right. That's it.
And Bob, I appreciate you mentioning about the letters from home, because in Bob's book, and one thing that I really enjoyed about it, that he started each chapter basically with the letter of home, or an excerpt from the letter of home in his book, Black Cat 2-1. So I encourage you to pick up that a copy of Black Cat 2-1 and read that. George, haven't forgotten about you. It's your turn now. You are known as some newsworthy folks have labeled the World War II folks as the greatest generation. Have you heard that phrase before?
Yes.
What does it mean to you when somebody said, you know, George, you were part of the greatest generation?
Well, it means a lot, and I have a lot of time to think now, and I think back, and I used to didn't think much about it, but maybe we were the greatest generation. But and this isn't to say that other generations, if they were faced with what we were faced with, I'm talking about the significant events that occurred during our watch, they would have done just as well or maybe better. I think about my upbringing, and was raised on a farm in Noble County, started to school in 1930. And all during my school years was during the Depression. And I want to mention a couple of things, mainly because it will contrast the difference between then and now. We didn't suffer. We had plenty. I was raised on a farm, and we butchered our own beef and pork, and we had chickens and gardens and all that. But there weren't any luxuries, which was all right. And then I graduated from high school in 41, and we all know what happened in December of 1941. And I enlisted in the service and went through training and ended up with the 6th Marine Division. We trained on Guadalcanal for a few months, and then we left for Okinawa, which was quite an experience. But I think I have taken quite a lot from my World War service. And setting aside the combat, which I won't go into, but the way we lived, Steve, was very primitive. And the things a man can get along without might surprise you. And I learned a lot about self-preservation and the way we lived and all that. And the one thing it has done for me it has made me a very appreciative man. I enjoy very much all the comforts and conveniences that we have. I really do.
And we live in a great country, that's for
We
sure.
certainly do, and we need to give that more thought.
Right. George, my father would be close to your age. He was a World War II veteran. He served in the Navy, and he would brag that he was part of the greatest generation. So it's okay to do that if you want to say so. But I remember my dad telling me he grew up in the Depression, and they lived on a farm outside of Perry, Oklahoma. And he said one Christmas morning, they got a potato in their sock. That's all they got for Christmas. And the reason he was so excited about that that potato in that sock is he could carve it to be any kind of toy that he wanted it to be. And so I remember my dad telling me a Christmas morning getting a potato. So that's life without luxuries right there. So, well, we'll have more with these gentlemen in just a moment. Thank you for joining us on this special edition of Veterans Day here on City Connections. My special guest to my immediate left, Captain George Bellmon, served in the Marine Corps and also in the Pacific Theater. And then we've got Captain Bob Ford, helicopter pilot during the Vietnam era, and also serving the Iraqi Freedom campaign is Major Ed Pulido, U.S. Army. I'm just thrilled and honored to have these three patriots with us today, and I'm thrilled that you're with us. We'll have more with these three gentlemen right after this. Welcome back to City Connections. I'm Steve Kime, and thank you again for joining us on our special Veterans Day program here for 2016. Again, I'm joined by Captain George Bellmon, also Captain Bob Ford, and also Major Ed Pulido, are my special guests today on City Connection and the Veterans Day edition, if you will. Major Ed, I have a couple of questions really left for everyone, but let me start with you. I know in your book you address depression. That you had it. I mean, it found you, if you will, and it was kind of the darkest deeps in your life. Tell us about what our soldiers today are facing in regard to depression and how your organization helps.
Well, that's interesting because we are finding out that traumatic brain injuries are the signature wounds of the war. The mental health stressors, of course, PTSD, combat stress, hypervigilance, anxiety, depression. People come back and it's like, do I have a job? Can I take care of my family? Am I going to be able to be productive? And so, you know, one of the things that we do here in the state of Oklahoma is that we've gathered a great deal of different organizations, led by Major General Miles Deering, who's our Secretary of Veterans Affairs, and give him a big shout out. Through the governor's office, they've put together a program and a plan of attack to make sure that in the state of Oklahoma that they can bring organizations together. Warriors for Freedom in Oklahoma City, they do a lot on those kind of traumatic brain injury issues and in supporting people with PTSD. And so to me, what we're trying to do in the state of Oklahoma is really develop a system that is public and private, and where it's the VA doing what they do, bringing other like-minded individuals, our community leaders, folks like you, the media, to make sure that we empower, we support, and we inspire, and we put a message out that we can always honor these service members, but we can have these great organizations be the support mechanism to making our state the best that it can be for our veterans. And that, to me, is the honorable thing. That's how we can serve if you've never served in uniform. And as I always tell people, you know, at the Folds of Honor, we are inspired by not leaving anyone behind on the field of battle. And if we can take care not only of the veteran, but the family member and have a safety net in place, I think we've made a difference. And I just want to commend our leaders in the state of Oklahoma for taking that big step.
Sure, sure. And I appreciate what you have mentioned about service. In my own particular case, the Vietnam War was winding down when the draft was in place, and I never did enlist, I never did serve. But as a kid, I always had this patriotism in my heart to fly the flag. And as a kid growing up in Perry, we always had a flag. And we have a flag at our house today. And on July 4th and Veterans Day and all the other Flag Day and Memorial Day, we line the yard up with flags. I've always been that way, and I felt like that may be my little part of service to honor the flag, but to honor everybody else that served, because I'm just so blessed to live in this country. And speaking of the message, Bob, let me turn to you at this time. As young people are watching this program, and this program will go on, and it'll have a life after itself, Bob. So you kind of have a platform to just kind of share, what does Veterans Day mean to you?
Well, thank you very much, because Veterans Day means everything to me. When I put my uniform back on, and it's the same uniform that I wore with pride when I graduated from University of Oklahoma. I was the only guy in military uniform that day, by the way. And the only one. And I wore my dress greens to there because I had such pride. Well, I get asked about Veterans Day to speak, and the best audiences anybody could ever want would be the second and third grade. I always go to the second grade class at O'Keene and in Canton, Oklahoma, and the third grade class in O'Keene. And when I step up there and say, now, kids, Veterans Day, what is it? I said, let me tell you what it is, because they all have answers, but they're all cute. But let me tell you what it is. It's honoring all those that served. And when I get asked why I served, it's because this gentleman right to my immediate right, that most wonderful, greatest generation, when I get asked that, I looked at George, and he's just the same as all these guys from World War II. And I tell him with great pride that I was expected to serve. I knew those World War II guys would expect guys like me to step up, and the ones I served with did. And that's why I tell them that, and I just freeze them, that they just can't believe that somebody would have that dedication to the country. Said, but we all do. We all are warriors. Look at Major here. Look at him. Look how he stepped up and served. Right. It's that way with all soldiers, and we'll never quit making them.
Well, I sense the patriotism in the room, because, ladies and gentlemen, as you watch the screen, as you see right here with the flags behind us, it's quite impressive, and it's impressive to hear the stories of these gentlemen. George, let me focus on you for a moment. You're a big, tall Marine in the room, and on Veterans Day in November each year, what do you think about, George? I'm sure there's a variety of things you think about.
I do. I want to say there's no such thing as a good war, of course. But looking back, Steve, World War II was different. We had some advantages that they haven't had since. And I want to mention, we had a cause for being there. This was right after Pearl Harbor, of course. And we had the benefit of every weapon in our arsenal. We also had the support of the people back home. And among other things, we were allowed to win. That hasn't happened since. Do you agree?
I would agree.
And I think about the young folks that have been called on to serve since that time, and the fact they haven't had those conditions. And I think we need to give it some thought. The other thing comes to my mind, I think we should be reminded of the unity that we had here at home, and the way that the women and the younger folks and all of those that weren't able to serve in the service, how they came together and produced the materials of war. I was in the Pacific, and I can honestly say that I can't think of one thing that we needed that we didn't have. There might have been, but I don't know what it was. But it was very commendable when you think about it, the way everybody came together and the attitude towards the war.
Thank you, George. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll come back and we'll have one final question for our special guest today. Thank you for staying with us on this special edition of City Connections Veterans Day. We'll be back in just a moment.
You guys are great.
Welcome back to City Connections Veterans Day Special Edition. To my immediate left, Captain George Bellmon, United States Marine Corps. George, you have the opportunity right now to look at that camera. And by the way, again, George, I just appreciate your friendship. I appreciate your service to our country. Thank you for the sacrifice you made. Anybody who goes to Guadalcanal for practice or training and ends up in Okinawa, they deserve a lot of thank you, and I appreciate you. Thank you, sir, for what you've done.
Thank you.
George, you have the opportunity to look at that camera right now, and I'd like you to speak to your fellow World War II vets and just say anything that's on your heart, if you would, please, sir.
There's an awful lot that can be said, of course. I feel privileged to have been able to serve in World War II. I served with an awful lot of fine people. And I think overall we handled it pretty good. And as I said before, I can't help but think about their younger people that have had to serve and be subjected to ambushes and be subjected to all of the explosive devices. And we've all seen what happened to so many of them. It's extremely sad to me. And but anyway, I feel privileged to have been able to serve, and I'm thankful for it, and I'm thankful for my life. I'm at an age that's elderly, and I enjoy pretty good health, and I'm very thankful for all of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Captain Bob Ford, over 1,000 missions, flying a helicopter in and out of the jungles. Thank you for your service, Bob. Thank you for your commitment to the cause and for just really serving to preserve our freedom. I sincerely appreciate getting to know you recently in the last year or so. I've really enjoyed your book, and you gave it to me on a Thursday or a Friday, and I had it read that weekend, and that's not characteristic for me. It takes me a little bit longer, but your book was done that weekend, and you had written an inscription in it. You said, "To Steve, I would do it again," signed Bob Ford. Tell us about that statement, "I would do it again."
When I was asked to write the last page of the book, and I had concluded the book and I hadn't written the last page, only just a couple sentences, because I could tell it was going to be very emotional. Well, the editor, the professional editor, said, "Bob, you need a last page, a little bit more description." And so I did, and it took me 2 weeks to just write that last page. And I tell people, when you read it, you say any 8th grade person could have written it, and they're probably correct. They could. It's very simple, very plain, but it's exactly what it was I felt. And the last thing I said in the book was, I was reminded of it when I asked my daughter when I went to my first book signing. I said, "Boy, I don't know what to write in the book. I don't like to put 'Have a good day' or any of this best wishes." Right. You know, that's just didn't cut it at all. And so she said, "Dad, my gosh," and she started crying. And she said, "Dad, put the last line you said in the book." And I did, because the last few sentences I told that the men that we served with dedication and honor, that I felt like I did a good job, and they said, and I know they would say, "Yeah, boss, you did a good job." And I said, "I'll tell you, I'd do it again with you guys. I'd do it again." And that's why it's in there. And so that's how I sign every book, with sincerity.
It certainly spoke volumes to me. Major Ed Pulido, U.S. Army retired. Major Ed, we have a special relationship, kind of sort of related. We're almost identical twins, as you can see the family resemblance there, but we are related through marriage, if you will. But I've had the opportunity to be on kind of the third row and watch Major Ed, and I call him Brother Ed all the time because I just feel like he's a dear brother to me. But first off, Major Ed, thank you for your service to our country. And you've given so much. And here I'm on this third row, and I've watched you develop and change and do different things, because now you're speaking around the globe, you've written a book, you're touching lives, you're doing a variety of things, and it's been rewarding for me to see where you've come from, because you have really had to go a long road. Most of us can't even relate to the challenges that you faced to get to where you're at in the Enid studios today. I'd like for you to close a segment out, Major Ed, if you would, on how veterans can reach out to you, the Folds of Honor and Warriors for Freedom, and anything else you'd like to share.
Well, certainly they can go to foldsofhonor.org and learn more about what we're doing. Here in this area, we've got the combined federal campaign that's going to be kicking off over October and November, and folks at the base can contribute to our number, which is 81337. And also, I just want to kind of personalize it, to be with these two heroes in my midst, and to think about the sacrifices that they've made, and then I come after them and do what I'm doing. You know, it's just, they're inspiring to me. And they're inspiring to me because I was hurting. I lost my left leg, I sacrificed it for my country. But then I think about the real stories out there, the heroes that don't come back. And the Ravella family who lost their loved one, or the Sarah White who lost her dad, and all of these recipients that we provide support, Major Dan Rooney and I at the Folds of Honor. To me, that's what's inspirational. And to my friends at Warriors for Freedom down in Oklahoma City, they're providing support. To me, all of us can do our part. And so as I close out, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart to the state of Oklahoma, to the greatest nation in the world, the United States of America, for not leaving me behind and giving me some inspiration and some hope and opportunity. And as I always say, and you and I are Christian men, and I know that all of us here can say this as well, God had purpose for all of us. He puts us here for you to do your show every day or once a week, for us to spread the goodwill to kids and to have history. And man, we live in the greatest nation in the world because someone sacrificed so much for our freedom.
Absolutely. Thank you, Major Ed. I'd like to remind everybody again, Major Ed's book, Warrior for Freedom. You want to make sure that you get a copy of that as well. And also Captain Bob Ford, Black Cat 2-1, and you will be sure to pick up a copy of that. Well, gentlemen, we're through with all the questions, but I've got one more presentation to make, and I need to read this to you. I have the privilege of working real close with Mayor Bill Shuey, the mayor of Enid, and work with him on a variety of projects. And he agreed that we ought to do something special. If we can get the three of you guys together, as my wife would say, that's like herding cats. You just can't get cats together. Maybe dogs or something, but herding cats. So you need a little bit more respect from that. But anyway, with the fact that the three of you represent different times in history and you have sacrificed and served so much, the mayor was in agreement that we should do this. So let me read this. It's a proclamation. And I don't have my glasses, but I think I can do this, George. It says, whereas under the flag of the United States, generations of women and men, united in a common cause greater than themselves, have served to defend the ideas that bind us together as a nation and that preserve our country as a beacon of hope and freedom around the world. And we pay tribute to these American patriots, and I'm sitting next to three of them here today. Whereas for the heavy price they pay, we will forever honor the legacy of their service and uphold the ideals they served and secured through their personal sacrifice. We owe all our service members an enormous debt of gratitude, and to honor the full weight of their sacrifices made by those who served, we must uphold our nation's promise to our veterans. Whereas we salute the selfless service members throughout our history who gave their own liberty to ensure ours. And whereas we recognize Captain George Bellmon, United States Marine Corps, for his service to our country and for his uncompromising sacrifice in the largest amphibious landing in the Pacific theater at the Battle of Okinawa in World War II. And now therefore be it resolved that Bill Shuey, the mayor of the city of Enid, hereby proclaims Wednesday, August 3rd, 2016, to be Captain George Bellmon Day. George, congratulations.
Could I add one thing?
Sure.
You got
sure.
time?
Yeah.
I have an American flag that flies in my yard.
Right, I've seen it.
Pretty neat.
Yep.
And when the breeze is right, it's a pretty picture. And I find myself sometimes stopping just looking and admiring that flag. And Steve, when I look back over my life and am reminded of all the things that our country has responded to worldwide, every calamity, so many things that we have provided resources and manpower. It bothers me that our flag is not revered and respected worldwide, but it isn't. Am I wrong?
Well, we can continue to, you can continue to fly the flag like you do, and I can do the same.
Absolutely.
And we'll do our part to give it
Absolutely.
all the honor that it deserves, right?
Absolutely.
George, let me give this to you. I've got to read a couple more things real quick. And the same language is on these proclamations. However, I do want to read in this order. All of that information that I shared earlier is appropriate. But we also have a statement here for Captain Bob Ford. It says, whereas, and again, this is from the mayor's office, Bob, we recognize Captain Bob Ford, U.S. Army, for his commitment to fly more than 1,000 missions as a helicopter commander during the Vietnam War. And now therefore be it resolved that Bill Shuey, the mayor of City of Enid, hereby proclaims Wednesday, August 3rd, 2016, to be Captain Bob Ford Day, and you have to share that with George Bellmon, Bob. Congratulations. Thank you so much. And Major Ed, the mayor was not about to leave you out because I was twisting his arm the whole way and said, we've got to include Major Ed. And on his proclamation, it has the same verbiage in the first couple paragraphs, but it says, whereas we recognize Major Ed Pulido, U.S. Army, wounded by an IED blast in Iraq, for his service to our country during Operation Iraqi Freedom and his work with the Folds of Honor Foundation. Now therefore be it resolved that Bill Shuey, the mayor of Enid, does proclaim Wednesday, August 3rd, to be Major Ed Pulido Day in Enid, Oklahoma. Major Ed, congratulations.
No, thank you. Thanks to the mayor and to these fine patriots and to you and your team as well that's here to spread the great will and great message.
Well, gentlemen, we got to close the show for this time. It wasn't too bad. Maybe we can do it again.
Okay.
Maybe? I don't know. George said, I don't know. Major Ed, Captain Bob, my good friend George, thank you for being here today. And thank you for being here today on our special edition of City Connections Veterans Day. To all of our veterans, thank you for your service. We owe you a debt of gratitude. Thank you for giving so much to make us or provide the opportunity to live in this great country. Happy Veterans Day, everyone. Thank you.
What an honor.